Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the November 8th Oklahoma City Planning Commission meeting. And first order of business is if anyone has a pager or cell phone or other device, we would ask that you silence those or turn them off right now so we are not interrupted. If you are not the applicant and you have come to address us on a case today, these sign-up sheets are available on the table right outside the chambers. If you would complete it for the case you'd like to address us on and give it to our staff, we would be happy to hear you on when that case is heard. And Commissioners, the first order of business is the October 25th minutes.
Approval of the minutes.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Cast your votes. And the minutes are approved.
On continuance requests, we have 3 uncontested requests for continuance. Item 20 is PC 10323. This will be continued until December the 13th. Item 21 is SPUD 686. Will be continued until January the 10th. And item 22, SPUD 681, has been withdrawn.
Did anyone come today to address us on those 3 items, 20, 21, or 22 on our agenda?
Move the uncontested continuance.
We have a motion to approve the continuances. Cast your votes, and they're approved.
We have 3 new requests for continuance. Item 12 is C6401, item 16 PUD 1475, and item 18 C6388, all to be continued until December the 13th.
Again, the same question. Did anyone come today to talk to us about items 12, 16, or 18 on our agenda?
Move the new request.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue items 12, 16, and 18. Cast your votes. Are there any requests for continuances from the public today? Okay, one more thing. Russell, I have a question. On item 4, is Dusty Bourne, the applicant for that item, here today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure you were here. We'll hear item 4 in order.
On the consent docket today, we have 2 items, ABC 770, and item 2 is C 5789.
And again, these items 1 and 2, anyone come to talk to us about items 1 and 2 today?
Move the consent.
Sir? You need to come to the microphone, sir. If you will give us your name and address. This is recorded, so we can't catch you.
Okay, I understand.
My
name's Tim Bell with Freebirds World Burritos. Didn't really come to talk, just answer any questions.
Okay, well, apparently there aren't going to be any, so
Okay.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Motion on the consent docket? We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Cast your votes. And the consent docket's approved.
On items requiring separate vote, item 3 is PUD 1469. This is an application by the City of Oklahoma City to rezone property generally located from Lincoln to North Lottie between Northeast 4th Street and Northeast 8th Street from several different zoning districts to PUD 1469 in Ward 7.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Dennis Box, and this is an application by the City of Oklahoma City, and I am here on behalf of Oklahoma Health Center Foundation, and we would like to discuss with you our zoning request and what has transpired since the last time this matter came before the Commission. There have been 3 meetings that have taken place so far. The second meeting, which was after the Commission heard this item, had approximately 90 people that attended, and there was a number of issues that were raised, and we attempted to respond to as many questions as we could. We attempted to set up a smaller group meeting, and we were trying to take a group that might be able to help us with language issues or issues that had been raised at a previous meeting. We did have that meeting. We ended up with 30 individuals there, so it was a very good turnout. And there was some questions raised that we are ready to respond to in regard to churches and the ability to use lots that they own adjacent to them. The planned unit development that you see in front of you is a planned unit development that the city is putting into place that will make sure that anybody that is interested in looking at how the property should develop will develop it in conformance with the Oklahoma Healthcare Center Master Plan dated 2007 through 2022. And the master plan calls for this area to be developed for institutional, office, higher density residential, and some commercial uses. So as you review your staff report, you will note that we're consistent in regard to our zoning with the master plan. Now, at the meetings that have taken place, there have been a number of issues that I think are very valid issues that have been raised, and we've tried to address them. The first issue was raised from homeowners, and that dealt with the ability to stay in their home, remodel their home, get refinancing, all of which we have addressed within the PUD, making sure that it's clear that the existing homes that are within this PUD area will be conforming and they can remodel, refinance, do any of the things that they can do today. There is a stat sheet that David Box handed out to you all, and as you review this, I know there were several commissioners that just had questions about the area. The area is, as indicated on the staff report, 107 acres. If you take the streets and right of way out, it's a little over 90 acres. But this gives you a very good idea of the breakdown within the PUD area in regard to ownership. Now, one of the questions came about at the last meeting dealing with, well, what if somebody has a house and they have a vacant lot next to it? When we went back and researched it, there's only 5 existing houses with the ownership that's consistent with the lot next door. So the likelihood that you're going to have much redevelopment occurring in that regard is minimal. I've had at least 2 people that owned one of those 5 lots that in one of the 2 meetings came up to me and just wanted to make sure they could leave their vacant lots vacant. We assured them they could. Now, this overlay zoning, not only does it address future uses and what the plan calls for and is appropriate, but with language, we try to make sure that the homes, and there's 100 homes as indicated, will not be impacted in a negative way, and therefore we welcome the residents to stay and live and sell and do whatever they want in those existing homes. What we don't want to have happen is on the vacant lots that are within this area for a speculator to come in and think that they can go build a single-family home and that be consistent with the future plans, because it's inconsistent. Now, if somebody wanted to build a higher intense use, such as office with residential on top, that would be permitted within this PUD. So that, we think, is consistent with good stewardship, making sure that everybody is fully aware of what the plan calls for and what the zoning allows. A representative, a deacon of the East Side Christian Church, and on the report we had it wrong. It said East Side Baptist, but it's East Side Christian Church, made a very good point, and that point was that they were a little bit confused about the language in regard to churches and what churches could do. And so we have language within the PUD that says existing churches shall be permitted to expand facilities and property. The goal early on was there was some meeting with the churches that exist within this PUD area, and the churches made it clear that they wanted to have the ability, if they own the lots adjacent to their churches, to be able to use those for church uses or related facilities. And so that's the purpose of that language. We would recommend that that be modified and say that churches be allowed to develop vacant lots they own adjacent to their churches for church uses, and we think that makes it a little more clear. But that was always the intent within the PUD. And so with that, we are here to answer any questions that you all have. At the meetings, I will tell you there was a lot of discussion about buying properties, and we are not proposing to work with the city in regard to what the city has applied for on the zoning to go buy properties, although I'm sure my client would at some point in the future, if people are wanting to sell, they'd sit down and talk to them. But that has nothing to do with this application. This application is for zoning only and has nothing to do with condemnation. So if there's any questions, we want to address it.
I have two.
Yes.
Just as a point of clarification, when you talk about churches and the adjacent property they might own, which is currently undeveloped, can that be used for church uses and church-related? To me, I'm thinking daycare or something like that, which would be,
Yes,
to me,
I can.
church-related, but not necessarily strictly a, quote, church use.
That, or if they needed additional parking, they could use.
Well, that's a church-related use, I think, but...
Right. But yes, daycare would fall within church-related uses.
Okay, so the language will reflect that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The other question I have is I wasn't clear on what you said. There are 5 homeowners who own the lot next door or an adjacent lot.
Yeah.
What can you do with that? I didn't understand.
Well, there was some discussion at one of the previous meetings, and at the meetings with the neighbors, there was some discussion about the ability to develop lots that they might own. So we went and researched the records, and I just wanted to make sure this commission understood there's only 5 existing homes that the ownership is consistent with a vacant lot next to them.
Okay.
It's just a...
Okay, James?
I have one question at this point. If a single-family resident now, that's an existing single-family resident, can the ownership transfer
Yes, sir.
and remain as a single-family residence?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we put the language in to make sure that not only can it transfer, but that they are conforming with the zoning regulations. So if somebody wants to go get refinancing, or if somebody wants to sell the home, whatever they want to do, it will continue to be a conforming use.
We'll go around the horseshoe, I guess. Any questions for Dennis? Mike, Janice, Buck, Jim, Todd, Nick?
Thank you.
Okay, we have several people signed up in protest, so we will hear from them next. The first one is Reverend Peoples. Sure. Reverend Jackson, if you would give us your name and address for the record, tell us where you live and where your church is.
Yes, sir. My name is Reverend Jesse Jackson, Jr. I live at 8714 Northeast 47th Street in Spencer, Oklahoma. I am the pastor of the East 6th Street Christian Church at 1139 Northeast 6th Street in Oklahoma City.
And that's within the boundaries of...
That is within the boundaries of the PUD.
Thank you very much.
I have been the pastor of that congregation for 16 years. The JFK Neighborhood Association meets in our congregation, and they have since before I became the pastor. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, there is a great deal of history that has to be covered, and it explains a lot of the apprehension that many of the neighbors have. We are a 93-year-old institution at East 6th Street Christian Church. Most of that time, the majority of the time, have been spent right there on those lots there. Years ago, we began to buy lots to the east and the west of us so that we could expand. Buildings built, church buildings, particularly in the 40s and the 30s, were not built for 21st century ministry in mind. And so we knew that we were going to have to address some of those issues, and that's why we began to acquire those lots. But in the meantime, as we look at the history of that community, there was once an imaginary line that African Americans could not live north of Northeast 4th Street. Then that line was moved to Northeast 8th Street. East 6th Street was within that boundaries. That community, as I look at the pictures and look at the history of that church, was filled with homes and filled with people. Then we look at the pictures later on. Urban renewal that happened in the late 60s and early 70s was so devastating to that community and so devastating to our congregation that it actually split the congregation. Our congregation split during that time. It's been a very painful memory, and it has been a great deal of mistrust now. And so I realize that we are a nation of laws. Laws do what police force used to do. And we are an authentic and a historic African-American community. The late John Hope Franklin, a Tulsa native, said that when you want to destroy a black community, you either build a highway or you change the zoning laws. We have many people down there that are absolutely afraid and don't trust anything that anyone else has to say because things were not done with a great deal of sensitivity before. So when people say that, yes, you'll be able to stay there, yes, you'll be able to do this, yes, you'll be able to do that, they say, well, that's the same thing they told us 30 years ago. That's the same thing they told us 40 years ago. There's a great deal of mistrust. That was one of the reasons that Deacon Anthony Francisco at East 6th Street Christian Church, I wanted to get that in the record as well, that was one of the reasons that he brought up what he did. We wanted to make sure that we would have clear language for our congregation as to what we can do, because if we do build, which we want to, adjacent to our property, then by law we have to add the parking, which is across the street on land that we've owned for these many years. And so I speak not only as pastor of this congregation, and I'm glad that we're talking about amending that language, that will alleviate a lot of the fears that we have as a congregation, but as a member of this historic community, as a part of it, I fear for the elderly in that community, the people whose homes have already been paid off, those who are disabled, those who are nearing retirement, those who are not going to be able to get a mortgage. And even though it appears as though nobody is forcing anyone to move. Now, we do have wildcatters in there, but the wildcatters are not sitting in this room on this side here as neighbors. Those are folk that just want their neighborhood. Or those are people that at this point in time are saying, you know what, this is inevitable. So let us just deal with it, but let us deal with it in a fair and just way. You can't buy a home for $30,000 or $40,000 anywhere in Oklahoma City now. Not that's worth living in. And we have people there that cannot get a mortgage because they're in their 80s or because they're disabled or for whatever reason. And so what we're saying is that there are some monies that need to be made available if those people want to move, so that when they do move, they do not have to move with a mortgage and they can move. We have people that seem to be caught up in the middle of a fight now between some large entities and some wildcatters that really want to make a killing. Nobody in the lower JFK is trying to hit the lottery. What we're trying to do is maintain our community. And if we cannot maintain our community, what we want to be able to do is to move with some fairness and some dignity. And so that is why we are standing here in solidarity today. That is why our brothers and sisters are joining us here in this fight and in this effort. And I appreciate the words of Attorney Box. And I had the opportunity to meet him earlier this week. And we exchanged a few words, and I mean a few nice words. And the conversation was cordial. But I stand here to let this body know that there's a tremendous amount of distrust here. And just because someone says it does not mean that it's going to ring true in the ears of people in that neighborhood, because we've heard those type of things before. So we have some apprehension. We need some things spelled out. There are some people that would like to move and get out of the way. No one is trying to stand in the way of progress. We would love to see it happen. But in order for this to happen, there needs to be some fairness and some equity in this. And as I expressed the other night, if people in that room that were ready to move were allowed to move with some fairness, that much of this dissension would go away. Folk would be gone. They would move. They would do it because we see it as inevitable. But what we don't want is to get to the last point. No one wants to deal with eminent domain, which is nasty and ugly. No one wants to deal with any of that stuff. We don't want to do it. So we want to be able to leave right now when we can for those that want to. For those that want to stay, we want them to have the option to stay. But we don't want to be zoned out of our community and out of our history.
Thank you. Any questions of Reverend Jackson, commissioners? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lewis Sims. I'm just taking these in the order I've got them. Mr. Sims, if you would give us your name, address, and tell us if you live within the boundaries of this area.
Yes, my name is Lewis Sims. I am a real estate appraiser, just as far as information goes. I do own a property that is located at 840 Northeast 5th Street, which happens to be in those particular boundaries.
Is that where you live?
I don't live there. No, I live in 3116 North Forest Park Terrace in Oklahoma City.
Thank you.
But by being an appraiser and also owning property in the area, I'm concerned about the neighborhood and also about the things that I see that's taking place in that particular neighborhood. And just wanted to kind of give you just a slight little point of view as from maybe an appraiser's standpoint, different things that I see that can happen from an appraisal standpoint, and also hopefully things that even though zoning, when zoning changes like that, even though the zoning does change to a PUD, we find that there will be some adverse things that will happen in that particular neighborhood. Kind of piggybacking on what Reverend Jackson just mentioned, all of this started back in urban renewal back 30 or 40 years ago, when urban renewal came in and began to acquire lots of the properties. What has happened over that period of time is, as you can obviously see from the neighborhood, just several more vacant lots there than we have actually homes in the neighborhood. And so this has had an adverse effect on the neighborhood just because of the urban renewal that's taken place. Now, if we come in and do the zoning, which is this PUD that has some limitations on it, this then creates another blanket over that neighborhood that allows some limited things that would happen in a healthy neighborhood. We're looking at this as a residential neighborhood. A residential neighborhood are able to do different things that you cannot do when you have a PUD like this. I'm an appraiser, and I look at homes every day, and I look at zoning, and when we have different forms, where you have either FHA or VA or as a loan company, whatever it might be, when they look at my appraisal, they are looking at the zoning, and we have a single-family home that's zoned the PUD with these type of limitations on it, saying that the only thing that can be rebuilt on this property is a commercial property or a medical center type property. That definitely has an effect on that lender making a loan on that particular property.
Mr. Sims, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Make sure I understand what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a residential property where there's a structure on it now,
Yes.
and the only thing that can be built on that is a commercial or office structure? Did I understand that, or were you talking about a vacant lot?
Well, the zoning itself is going to cover the whole area. So,
I understand
so
that.
that particular area, whatever's on it, if it's a vacant lot or it's a structure on that property, with the new zoning is going to cover that whole area. So that particular house now becomes zoned as a PUD, not as a single-family home. Yeah.
Well, it's under it's under the PUD, under the PUD, but
Yeah.
it's my understanding that you can replace a single-family home with a single-family home.
Well, you replace? No, you can't. Well, I'm talking about from a loan standpoint. No, are you saying if it burns down? Is that what you're saying?
I could take it down if I own it.
Well, if it does burn down, it can't be replaced as a single-family home.
Yes, it can.
It has to be built back under the zoning.
But the zoning as it's
The zoning requires anything to be built in that particular neighborhood to be a commercial property.
That's not so. That's not what the PUD says. My understanding of the PUD is it says if I have a single-family home and it burns down, tornado hits it, I decide to remove it, scrape the lot, I can replace it with a single-family home because that's the current use and the current use can continue.
Oh, the current use, okay, well, that's correct then.
So that means that the present homeowner can continue to use that property as a single-family home. They can bequeath it to their heirs. They can sell it. Apparently, they can rent it because a number of houses in the area are rented. Or they can replace it with a single-family home. That's my understanding.
Okay, well,
And
that's
if I'm
correct.
not correct, Mr. Box, tell me. All right, thank you. I just want to make that clear because I didn't understand you. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, but again, going from a loan standpoint, and I'm looking at the underwriters and things that will look at these properties, will look at the zoning that's in that particular neighborhood, they will look at the limitations that's been placed on houses in that neighborhood because of the zoning. Many lenders will not loan a property that's in that particular neighborhood because of that. Now, obviously, this neighborhood has several different limitations. Because of the vacant lots in the neighborhood, lenders are already hesitant about coming into the neighborhood in the first place. Secondly, if you come back and put that zoning again on that neighborhood, then it penalizes that area. So all we're asking, I think, would be why rezone the property at this point in time? Why not just leave it as a single family? And as they begin to get definite plans on a property that needs to be built or a structure that needs to be built, then come in and rezone for that specific building itself instead of just rezoning the whole neighborhood and creating a problem that, as you see now, it already has concerns because of the fact that you are going to put this zoning on a neighborhood that's a residential type neighborhood. So why not just leave it as it is, as a single family neighborhood? Then it becomes a healthy neighborhood. They don't have that particular restriction that a lender will look at or penalize the homeowners that's there now. And that's basically all I wanted to say, I believe, yeah.
Okay, Commissioners, any
Any
questions?
other questions? Yeah.
Mr. Sims.
Yes.
I have one, Mr. Sims. Over the course of, like, say, Mr. Sims, over the course of the last, say, 30 years, how many new houses have been built in this area? Do you know?
Probably in this particular area, it would be hard to say. It'd be hard to say, but it's very, very few.
Okay.
Very, very few. Still, I would say there's probably it would appear to be more vacant lots than actual homes in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And so
Thank
that has had an adverse effect, yeah.
you very much.
I have a question for Mr.
Yes, James.
Mr. Sims, I think we explained that if a single-family residence, that's R1, single-family residence, it can be replaced or reused as a single family. So that's kind of, I think it's kind of clear.
Okay.
My question to you would be, what would be the effect of some of the other zoning designations upon that single-family residence? Like what would a more of a commercial zoning of not that piece of property, but another piece of property, or the bulk of the property around it being zoned for more of a dense use, how would that impact that single-family, the appraisal of that single-family home?
Okay. Well, it would definitely have, again, an adverse effect. And the reason why is because when you have that type of zoning with those restrictions, then the lender comes back and they look at it and they say, well, okay, if this property is zoned per PUD, and it's with the restrictions that it has on it, there's a commercial area, so then the highest and best use for that property is not as a single-family home. The highest and best use for property in that particular neighborhood becomes commercial. So because of that, that puts a restriction on that particular neighborhood and that particular area.
Does that,
That confused me, sir. Typically, when we talk about highest and best use in commercial and residential, isn't commercial property typically more valuable than residential property? Wouldn't it raise the value rather than lower it?
Well, it depends on what your purpose is and why you're buying the property. If you're buying it as a single-family home, it's probably a little lower. But now, if you are a speculator coming in to buy it as a commercial use property, not necessarily to build a home there, but to probably just to buy the land and to push the building down, or to push that structure down, yes, it probably would bring more value.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr.
Okay,
Sims?
thank
Oh, Janice?
Yes.
If the PUD did not take the approach that it's taking to single out the single-family residential properties and preserve the zoning that they have, if the PUD were a blanket overlay that provided for denser uses, commercial, office, multifamily uses, see how I can ask this question. In terms simply of property value, not in terms of the desire of people to remain in their homes, but simply in terms of property value, would that actually increase the value of those lots if they were rezoned in conformance with the more dense uses provided by the PUD?
Yeah, your question is fairly similar to what he was asking just a minute ago. If you're looking at it as a commercial area, yes, it would be, yes. But again, we're looking at it as simply trying to preserve it as a residential neighborhood just as long as we can. And if you're looking at it as commercial, yes, it would increase the value, yes. But we're looking at it in its present use, the highest best use at this particular point in time would hopefully be a single-family home. But if it becomes commercial use, then that highest and best use is not a single-family home, but it becomes a commercial, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Diane McDaniel. Give us
Good
your
evening.
name and address.
Diane McDaniels, 617 North Everest Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Now, the same question I've asked everyone else. Do you live within the boundaries of this?
I live at the tip end of those boundaries,
Is there-
on Everest.
So the answer is yes or no, which?
No,
Okay, thank you.
I live on the outskirts, on the peripheral.
You live on the southeast corner of it,
Yes, sir.
basically.
And that definitely affects me. In fact, where I live, and we've been through this once before. I've been in front of you, and like I said, the master plan for the Oklahoma Health Center, thank you, does not comply with the Oklahoma City plan. We were told that in this plan, that the city, there was supposed to be infill housing built. There have been you asked the question, when was the last time a house was built? I couldn't even tell you when, and I live there. People are not coming in that area because the word is out that OU, Health Science Center of Technology, is coming through. We have a resident who lived there, tried to get some money to refurbish and get her house modernized. Excellent credit, 800 or more. And the bank would not even finance her because of the encroachment of the Health Science Center Park and Recreation and all the greenscape. You know, Martin Luther King said from the Birmingham jail, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And we don't feel as if justice is being treated fairly. Mr. Bach wanted to meet with 6 or 7 of the residents, but I didn't feel that that was fair because what affects one family affects all of us in that area, whether we live in the zone or just at the edge of the zone. It affects us all. And I would expect that the Planning Commission would realize that. Now, let it be said on record that we said to the attorneys, those of us who are ready and willing to sell, confront us, negotiate with us, and acquire the land. We want progress. There are those who want to live and stay there. Then why rezone it? We went out and got the Ministerial Alliance, the Baptist Ministerial Alliance. Would you all stand up, ministers? They are in support of our efforts. thank you all. We're not asking that to stop progress or rezoning. It will affect us. As the value of the property increase, guess what is going to increase? Our taxes. Tax is going to increase. But at the same token, because it's not residential anymore, it can't borrow money to improve, it's going down. And those of us, including myself, on a fixed income cannot afford it. So I really want to thank the Planning Commission for allowing us to address you. But I want you to search your conscience real hard and put yourself on the outskirts or in the PUD. Would you want somebody bombarding you with an industrial and commercial type zoning if you live there? Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I want to thank the BMA for coming to support us, and I want to thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. Any
Do you have
questions?
any questions?
Mrs. McDaniel, anyone? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Reverend Peoples, please. We saved the best for last.
Sometimes it is said that the last will be first.
There you go.
I'm John W. Peoples. I live at 3108 North Forest Park Drive in Oklahoma City. I am not located within the boundaries that is the subject of discussion this afternoon, but I do have deep roots in the area. And I want to first of all say that I'm here to support the commission. I'm here to support the OU medical development. And I'm also here to support the residents of the community. And I want to address this from two standpoints this afternoon. First of all, perhaps from a political standpoint, and secondly, from a moral standpoint. I did hear that the current plans will extend to 2022, which is 10 years. And having had some experience with cities and planning commissions and communities, I know what will happen in 2022. Those plans will change. And so those persons who currently are property owners, of which it is my understanding that there are some 86 property owners, and I believe I heard you say a moment ago 5 have adjacent lots, only 5. But that doesn't take into consideration the totality of the property owners. Also in the boundaries are churches. Reverend Jackson has spoken. And we know that in the event that the current plans were approved, and in the event that Reverend Jackson was able to build facilities, 21st century facilities, if he could get the money to do it, in 2022, there would be no residents in the community. So what would be the point? Not only is Reverend Jackson, and by the way, it's East 6th Street Christian Church, New Hope Baptist Church is in the area. So what I see happening is the destruction, complete destruction, of a community that has been in existence for 90 years or more, being completely wiped out politically through zoning. And I'm here to say that it is immoral to wipe out a complete community politically. I would ask, And I'm not opposed to rezoning. I'm not opposed to improvements. The medical facilities are needed, and I support that. And so, like when I wanted to purchase a home, must have been about 50 years ago, they told me that I didn't have enough money, and so I couldn't purchase it. And when I did come up with enough money, I was able to purchase it. The current planning is just simply saying we will wait until those 86 property owners, which have been there for a number of years, have passed on, and we'll be able to go there. We won't have any opposition because there'll be nobody to oppose. And we will have, in effect, taken the property and a community. It's a moral issue as well as a political issue. My plea would be for OU medical facilities and for the Planning Commission to work with OU and let them compensate the folk in the area, and then they got no more problems. Neighbors, people in the community can be relocated and made whole. The area can be rezoned, and in 2022, whatever the zoning commission decides to do at that point, you'll be able to do it without any opposition from residents. But what will ultimately have happened anyway is that that community where I believe the Douglas High School is in that community, and that's the only school that African Americans in Oklahoma City could go to school for many, many years, probably close to 100 years. Couldn't go to, if you didn't go to Douglas High School in Oklahoma City, you couldn't go to high school. I graduated from Douglas High School. And Washington Park was the only park where African Americans could go for picnics and recreation, the only park. The Jewel Theater was the only theater where African Americans could go to attend a movie. And I'm sure that there are other, matter of fact, I think there's still a YWCA or YMCA on that, in that area. And so what is happening is politically, through zoning, a culture and a history of a people will be completely wiped out. And I'm not opposed to the progress, but I think that it is a moral issue, and I believe Ms. McDaniel spoke it, that if it were happening to any one of you commissioners, you would take the exact same position. I'm not against the progress. I'm not against the development at all. I say compensate the people, rezone it, and then make the people whole as they want to go, and then, because I know that it can be done. When you're talking about, I know how corporations work, I know how cities work, I know the philosophy of cities. Cities understand land is not going anywhere. And all they got to do is just wait. So we'll wait another 10 years to 2022. And those 86 property owners in there, well, most of them will be gone by that time. So we will have, in effect, taken their property, locked them in, and who 80 years old, 70 years old is going to want to go out and get a mortgage? Would you? Most of us would not. It's a moral issue that you need to take serious consideration, and so I'm not opposed to OU medical development. I'm not opposed to the rezoning. I support it. Compensate the people adequately and let them go on and live out the rest of their lives as peaceful as they possibly can, as you would want to do. God bless you.
Mr. Box?
If I could just tell the commission a few things. Number one, there has not been any condemnation that has occurred within this area. So the figures that you see, the circumstances that exist today have all taken place based on the free market system. With regard to the zoning, I want to reemphasize two things. Number one, we will modify the language to make sure that there's no question about churches being able to use both their existing church facilities and lots that they own for church and church-related uses. And as you indicated, Mr. Chairman, if it's a daycare center, that's fine. If it's parking, whatever those uses are. With regard to residential, I'll reiterate that from our standpoint, we think the language is clear, but we'll work with your legal counsel. And when we say it's a conforming use, that means that if fire does burn down the house, then they have the right to build it back up. And they have the right to remodel and all the rights we talked about before. Now, the issue with regard to this PUD, I think it's important to keep in mind we have made those advances to make sure that the people that want to continue to reside in this area not only have the right to, but they have the same rights that they have today. And in addition to that, the overlay of uses, in my humble opinion, will provide increased value to the properties that they own. Now, with regard to that question that Reverend Peoples talked about in regard to allowing people to get fair compensation, I'm going to ask Mr. Terry Taylor to just address you on that briefly, keeping in mind this zoning is done and is being requested to make sure that everybody that is looking at this property and that lives in the property, one, is taken care of if you live there, but two, if you're looking at these properties, you understand that there's a master plan that this commission adopted that sets into motion what is anticipated and what is planned for future development.
Dennis, I got a question before you leave it there. We'll put a builder's hat on right now. I want to go in that area, and one of these folks want to buy one of the lots and build a house that's on a vacant lot. Can I do that?
No.
Okay. Now, if
You
the
can't
house
build a
burns,
single-family residential.
okay.
Yeah.
If the house burns down, can I rebuild that house?
Yes, sir.
Can you guarantee me that I can take, when that house is burnt down, I can get an appraisal, go to a mortgage company, and get a loan with that kind of zoning?
Well, I can promise you that I'll put language that the municipal council will review that gives you the right to build a single-family home on that lot where the home burned. Now, I can't...
Well, that does not. If I have to make a loan on that house, there's no way that PUD can tell that mortgage company is going to lend on that property with that PUD over it.
There's PUDs on residential and commercial properties all around this community.
I understand that. As you well know, I'm an appraiser, but I still think that would be a difficult sell if I were to have to go in and appraise a house, put that PUD on it, and the mortgage company look at the PUD and say, this thing is rezoned for expansion of the OU Medical Center. I don't know where I want to make a loan on it or not.
Okay, but if you've looked at the PUD, we were very sensitive to the exact question that you have raised, and that's why we have paragraphs that deal with the residential side and the church side to make sure that this PUD continues to allow for those single-family residences that are there to be considered conforming uses, and that's why you can build a house back, and that's why, from our standpoint, this is no different than you might see as an appraiser. If you have an individual that wants to build a house and the property is zoned for R4 apartments. Well, you can build a single-family home, so you can get, the money to go ahead and build that home, even though if you wanted to, you could build multiple units on that property. So I think you have to think of this as we're not taking away any of those rights from the single-family homeowner. We're just adding additional uses that can be put on top of that property.
I understand that, but I still say that probably you're going to have difficulty obtaining a mortgage of any kind to rebuild that house with a mortgage company.
Well, that's why we put the language in there, to make sure that, if that question was asked, the answer is, it is a permitted use under this zoning.
I have two thoughts on that, Jim, just as point of clarification. When Ms. McDaniel was up here, in her right hand she held the city's master plan done 10 years ago, and in the other hand, briefly, she held the amendment, which was passed in 2007, 2008. It contemplates it was the health center master plan. So that's already a part of the city's master plan now. The second one amends the first. So that issue, to some extent, probably exists today, I would think. And the other thought I have is, unfortunately, you look at the area and a large expanse of it is vacant lots, and then I'm a homeowner and I come in for a mortgage. I don't know how different the bank's response, whether the bank's response would be different, I guess is my answer. I don't know the answer to that, but I would think it would be.
And none of us can tell that.
Right, that's the
None of
point.
us can predict that. But from my experience as an appraiser, and I have to agree with the gentleman that came up that is an appraiser, that very well could affect the ability to obtain a loan.
Okay. James?
I mean, this is a
Nick, go ahead.
fine line that maybe Mr. Brummett would like to address, but I think the difference there, Jim, and what you're talking about is the difference between legal conforming and legal non-conforming use. All these are not, these existing uses are not going to become legal non-conforming under the new PUD. They're legal conforming, which basically the PUD adds some uses but doesn't dilute any of the existing uses. And, I'm not in the business of making loans, but there's a lot of things that go into those loan applications other than a credit score and an appraisal.
That's right.
Just out of a curiosity, we've heard from an appraiser, a mere resident, Reverend Peoples, and they all come down to fair compensation. Well, Mr. Box has made a point of this is not a taking, and I understand that it's not a taking. It's rezoning, and there's no condemnation, no taking. That said, my question to you all is, what's fair compensation? What do you want? Can somebody answer that for me? Anyone? What are we talking about here? I know it's something more than 30 or 40,000.
Yes, sir.
Reverend Jackson, because you threw that number out.
Yes, sir.
And I agree. You can't buy a house in Oklahoma City for 30 or 40 grand. But my question is, are we talking fair compensation of 100,000, a million? What are we?
Well,
What's fair? Let's define fair compensation here for a moment.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, these residents here are not the wildcatters, and my concern in a pastoral way was that, particularly for those people that I mentioned, those seniors, those near retirement, those that are disabled, to be able to buy the kind of home that they need, without having to obtain a mortgage.
Well, I understand.
I mean, I think it would vary from, depending on the number of folk in the house, the size of the house they have now. Everybody realizes, this is not nobody's hitting the lottery, but you just want to be able to move to and have something comparable and something that will fit your disability needs. And so I don't know in terms of the number where they would be, and it probably would vary from home to home. But, I mean, that's the main thing, that people would be able to move without having to obtain a mortgage. And again, particularly for those that are elderly, those that are near retirement, or those that are disabled. Those are the ones, but it would be good for everyone, I think. I did not have a dollar amount in mind when I said...
I'm not asking for a finite dollar amount, but what I am asking in general terms is, and I think you've answered it, I empathize that, if you're in a position in an existing home and you want to move,
Yes.
and you can't replace that existing home, and the frustration here is these guys aren't asking you to move, they're not forcing the move, they're not condemning the property, and yet by putting this overlay zoning on, I don't see that that's a taking of the property either. I don't think that helps that frustration one way or the other. If it's zoned or not zoned, you're still in that property, and if you want to move, you still have the same problem. And what I was trying to get to in general philosophical terms was, what is that theoretical amount? And I think you answered it. It's to get into a like home elsewhere in the community.
But in that, you're looking at, when I looked at my house, a comparable home at today's prices with the moving expenses would be $201,000.
Okay.
If I live right now, and that's with the expenses
That's your
and
number.
everything.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I understand that. But you're one of many, but
that's just, I'm one of many, and each one of the residents would be different based
That's
on
correct.
their needs and stuff. Yes, sir.
comparable.
And if you wanted to move today, what would you do? Would you hire a realtor, put a sign out front?
Sir, I already have a realtor. I have a sign out front. I'm ready to move. If somebody is willing to buy today, I'm ready to sell.
Well, when you get a buyer, you can sell and you can move.
Just out of curiosity,
Well, yes, sir.
I had one question. Your property's listed now?
Yes, sir.
And can you tell me what your listing price is?
Yes, sir.
What?
$150,000.
Okay, thank you.
And I would still like to live somewhere on the northeast side of Oklahoma City, the northeast quadrant. I feel comfortable, safe, secure. My child grew up in that area, and I'd like to stay there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Reverend Peoples, one more, and then we'll...
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I can appreciate everything that I've heard, and I appreciate your sensitivities. I appreciate OU Medical. I appreciate the work that you're doing here. It's a hard job. Oklahoma City needs the expansion of the OU Medical facility. And because of that, Oklahoma City has a responsibility to make that property available for OU to do their development. They have that responsibility. This facility will be there probably for another 100 years. And whatever they have to spend to have access to that land, they will make it back in just a very few years. I'm pleading for the relocation funds to be made available. I would ask this commission to negotiate with Oklahoma City, that Oklahoma City would make that land available, would properly compensate the churches for relocation, the property owners for relocation, and let's get on with it and not just take the property from the people. I understand what you're doing. You're absolutely right. You're sensitive. What is Reverend Jackson or Reverend Tyson going to do with an expanded church in the middle of a medical facility with no residents around there to attend, with people moving to the suburban areas? They're not going to come back 20, 25 miles to attend a church. I don't care how well developed it is. We talked about General Motors and Chrysler, the auto bailout just recently. And I happen to know that the cities made the land available for those developments. And if somebody does not push the city to do that, they don't have any reason to do it. If somebody doesn't say to OU, yes, we want you to have this, but you want this land, pay for it. And then it's yours. And so I'm pleading with this honorable commission to get with the city, Oklahoma City, and OU. They have a lot more ability to come up with the money than these people would have to come up with the money to relocate. They would never be able to come up. 75, 80 years of age, people been in the area all their life. I'm almost 80 years old. Almost. And I would not want to try to even go into a mortgage company. You're absolutely right, Commissioner Allen, as well as Commissioner Gales. And I think the chairman, Commissioner Yoko, has been very fair. Commissioner Williams and Ellers and all of the rest. I appreciate your questions, Commissioner Powers, and I believe Hensley. You know how this thing works. Don't let the city and OU run over these people like a bulldozer runs over people, because in 10 years, and we know that master plans can be revised and changed, and we know that in 10 years they will be changed. We know that. They will come right back to this honorable body and say, we wish to revise the master plan that went into effect in, 2007? And we'll have legitimate, valid arguments for doing it. And it will be done. And the people will have been screwed. It's just a matter of time. I'm pleading with this body to get with the Oklahoma City, whoever you have to get with, the mayor or the managers or whomever, an OU medical facility, and the community, and work out what is in the best interest of everybody. Nobody's wanting to, take advantage of anything. Just work out what is honest and fair and honorable in the sight of God. That's my plea, that you would do that. And I would ask that you would give serious consideration to convening a meeting with Oklahoma City and the OU and the people of the community and work out what is right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For all of you, Reverend Peoples and everyone else, just so you understand the process, what we have before us is a zoning request. We are a recommending body to the City Council who will actually decide the zoning, decide whether they take our recommendation, whether it's to rezone or not. The decision becomes theirs. That's also where the buck stops. We don't have any ability as a planning commission to negotiate funding with the Health Sciences Center or any other private body. That's not within the purview of the Planning Commission. We cannot do that. All we can do is consider the zoning issue before us and make a recommendation to the City Council. So the Urban Renewal Authority operates independent of us, and on zoning matters, we answer to the City Council. Just so you understand, that's the next stop, regardless of the outcome of the vote today. Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make clear and state that as representing over 60% of ownership in the PUD, the entities that own over 60% of this property, we also are interested in fair play, and we will entertain, as we have for the last multiple years, in buying parcels as they become available on the market. We will gladly entertain the free market system, the appraisal system, going through that and acquiring properties as they come for sale. Thank you.
So if Ms. McGuire's well, she's not within your boundaries, though, is she?
Within the boundaries of our PUD, of our proposal.
Well, if you want to sell your property, you can talk to them, but not here.
Just wait a minute. I have a question for Terry about the properties that they bought. Those properties that you currently own, what is there? Is it all still zoned residential? Is it still, how is that?
The breakdown is
I'd appreciate if we could have the information from the guy that I asked.
Well, there are multiple different zonings there, from I-2, I-1, I-4, O2, C3.
Right.
So it's multiple. It's just whatever it was at the time.
That's correct.
Right. And so the vacant.
And you will see on the yellow parcels noted on this board, that is what is included, that is property already owned by representatives of this PUD.
And the vacant, though, the ownership this is the ownership by percentage. That includes the vacant is 9.79%, but it's zoned, has varying zoning districts.
R2, mostly R2.
Okay. The existing and vacant is mostly R2.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
James?
Let me ask you, Dennis, either one, let me ask you a question. It's obvious that we still have some divide here, and it's obvious that we still haven't gotten to consensus on some of the issues. But what I would like to know is, like, what is your time frame or your timeline for development, and what's driving your rezoning of this right now? And as the question was asked, you have 60% of the property. Why not just rezone your 60% without affecting the residents? I mean, this is a question that could be answered by me or others, but I'd like you to answer it, so that we could have a clear understanding of that. So what is your development timeline?
Well, the timeline is driven by the city's adoption of the Health Center Master Plan to keep speculators from going into this property and this land that has been designated for health center expansion by both this body and the City Council. So the timeline will just be when the health center expands to that area, it is ready to go. It's already there, and you don't have to worry about some speculators that have moved in trying to take advantage of that vacant property that is being designated for this.
So you have 60% of the property. Is any of those 60% of those property speculators? You have site control of 60% of the properties?
Yes, sir.
So we're talking about another 40% that you're trying to protect from speculators going in?
Yes.
And right now you don't have any
in those terms, of course, we don't, some of that 40% is already occupied by houses.
Yeah. And right now you don't have any plans for any construction or anything?
Well, it's already coming south. As you can see, the city itself is already cutting the street, Phillips, a big wide commercial street, office street, coming from 8th Street south to 7th Street. The city has approved a PUD allowing for a 250-room hotel south of 8th Street. The Kitty Corral, the cancer sitter, Toby Keith's Kitty Corral has been approved by the city, allowing for similar to a Ronald McDonald House, specifically related to the OU Cancer Institute, south of 8th Street. So the jump has already occurred. The University Police Station, United States Post Office, all those uses are already south of 8th Street.
So some of those other proposed developments that you spoke of earlier, like the Kitty Foundation, are they proposed on any sites that one of those residents are living on now, or one of those residents?
No, they have already been approved by this commission in accordance with the master plan.
And it's already sites that's available for those?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm scratching my head. I almost hate to ask the question. I'm not sure how I see that this relating to speculation, because if the property is not owned by one of these entities right now, it can be sold by the current owner to anyone who comes and makes an offer. That doesn't change. Is there something I'm missing, Mr. Box?
Well, you're missing the component that deals with vacant lots and how they can be developed.
I understand, but if I'm interested in buying one of those lots, I can go and do it tomorrow and wait for the appropriate use.
Correct. But you could not go in and build a $500,000 single-family home.
I understand that.
Right. And that's when he said speculators, that's what he was talking about. That's what he meant. But, you know, I think to approve a PUD that's consistent with your plan is not a negative thing. It's a positive thing. I mean, what we're doing is allowing the uses that exist there to continue on just as they are today. We're just putting an overlay to show that the plan is going to be put into place. And with regard to what Reverend Peoples said in regard to fairness and morality, Terry indicated to you he would sit down just like they have in the past, and if somebody wants to sell their property, he will talk to them. But the zoning really doesn't have anything to do with that. So, thank you.
Well, Commissioners, we've spent a lot of time in 2 meetings, and we've gone to community meetings, and I think we need to take action and send this to the council.
Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, James, I had a question. I'm not clear on how this works. Okay? So there's vacant lots, and then the vacant lots are used within the uses that we have in the PUD, right?
That is correct.
Okay? So if I currently own 5 vacant lots that happen to be next to each other, I could develop a hotel under lodging accommodations, commercial lodging, right?
That is correct.
As I sit here today. Now, if I lived in a home and owned 2 more residential lots, I could sell those and do participant recreation and entertainment, right, under the PUD.
That is correct.
The only thing I could not do would be to
build a house.
I'm trying to think what I couldn't do.
You can't build a house.
I can't build a house on my vacant lot.
That is
I
correct.
just couldn't build a house on my
A
vacant lot.
single-family house on a vacant lot.
On a vacant lot. But I could rebuild a home on my existing lot subject to credit availability, and that's, who knows?
Yes, sir.
Now,
And if you're a church and you have vacant lots next to you, you can do anything with those vacant lots that you want to that are church-related uses.
right, now with respect to the churches, though, if they own lots across, if they already own a lot across the street, they can use that for their parking
That's correct.
or for a church-related use, if they currently own it.
Yes, sir.
But they couldn't buy a vacant lot across the street to expand their church use? I'm not trying to draw too fine a point here, but I heard I think it was Reverend Jackson mention a point with respect of parking across the street or some, I think that needs to be considered.
Yeah. And if we need to modify that language, we want to work with the churches, and we will add that use to allow them. If they own the lots today, when this PUD is approved, and they want to put church-related uses on it, they have every right to.
And in the market there, are homes selling? It currently?
I could not tell you. I can tell you there has not been a home built since 1986 within this PUD area.
Right.
But I do not know the market.
And currently the market, though, so far as comparables with respect to an appraisal, et cetera, if we're measuring those, I think Commissioner Allen, I just had a property appraised, and they looked at sales in the neighborhood, right? So I'm suggesting, I'm questioning right now at the current time, looking at comparables in the neighborhood, are there any?
There was a house built in 2005 or 6, I think. We're not going to continue this as a debate for very long. Just one more comment, and then we're going to...
I just want to know if there's any sales.
It's an area that, in essence, is really almost dead because of the fact there's so much vacant land, because of the encroachment of commercial properties in the area. So there are basically nobody actually buying a house in that particular neighborhood because of that.
Thank you.
So your answer to the question is no, there's no real sales. There have been maybe a speculator may come in and buy a property. And there was one here just recently that I know of. They bought it, but they pushed the house down as soon as they bought the house. So what I'm saying, so the only ones that's coming in to buy a house at this point in time are just simply speculators. And so that's why I'm saying it creates an unhealthy neighborhood.
Right.
Because of what's taking place and because of the amount of vacant land and because of the new zoning that you're proposing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, action, one word.
Mr. Chairman, I'm having trouble supporting this application at this time for the zoning because of all the controversy, and it's apparent that the zoning is having some adverse and negative impact on the residents and the property owners there. I think that it's a little soon for this zoning to be approved. I think could use some more work, and I can't support the application at this particular time.
I feel exactly the same way. I've never had a case come before me since I've been on the Planning Commission where I genuinely felt like everybody was doing the best they could, and still the outcome was so negative. It's hard sometimes to sit up here with all the different hats. We all have, most of us anyway, have day jobs. And I'm a lawyer, and I've done eminent domain, and I've done zoning work, and I hesitate to say this out loud, but I used to represent the Urban Renewal Authority, and I've done work on the Health Sciences Center, and when I drive by and see the research park, I feel kind of a little shiver of pride that I helped make some of that happen. And I think there's nobody in this room or in this building, maybe not even in this city, that doesn't want the Health Sciences Center to succeed and to grow and to flourish and to prosper. And I think they are trying to do everything they can to make that happen. I think that the attorneys involved in this case and Mr. Terry Taylor have really tried hard to find a way to answer the questions and the needs that they're hearing from the community in terms of protecting the ability of people who want to remain in the area to do that. And yet, the reality is, and I think everybody recognizes, the reality is the Health Sciences Center is, this thing that is growing. It's moving, it's on the move, and it's going to take over this area. And on the one hand, you can say that's actually a good thing, and yet there's no denying that, there's a history here, and that what there was of the residential community in this area has been decimated by the process of urban renewal and by the growth of the Health Science Center, not necessarily the Health Sciences Center fault. I don't mean it in that way, but it's just a reality. The play of concerns here between progress and development and the positive byproducts of that for the city and for the community as a whole versus the very real deterioration of a residential community that is hanging on by its fingernails and has its own very good reasons. There's no question in my mind about that, for doubting that this will be a good thing for them in the end. this has not ever worked out well for you, and I get that. And although I was told recently I should get over that, it's something I can't get over. I'm very concerned that the city has had a hand, with all the best intentions, in creating a situation where residential property values in this area are already depressed. And so to say to the people in that area, even today, that you could sell your house for what it's worth and go someplace else is not really an adequate response, in my view. We have some constraints on us in terms of what we're really doing here. If I could wave a wand and make this all better, boy, would I. This is a zoning case that is before us, and we are here to look at the land use considerations. I can't really agree that the acquisition of property is not part of that. We just had a long discussion earlier today about acquisition of property and facilitating that process for the city to help the Court Shore project. And I think in some ways the Health Sciences Center is just as much a piece of the future of Oklahoma City as that is. And I think there has to be a way to make this right. I don't think we're there yet. I just don't think that even given everybody's desire to do the right thing and to find a way there, that we're there yet. I totally understand that the very idea of eminent domain is anathema to most of the people sitting in the audience, and I understand that the Health Sciences Center is very committed to that not being how they acquire the property. But at the same time, I have to say, one of the things that makes this so difficult is that some of the concepts, some of the ideas that would help to, I try to say this without sounding patronizing, protect the community that remains in terms of relocation assistance and that kind of thing are actually components of eminent domain. And so on the one hand, that's just, something that nobody even wants to think about or talk about. But on the other hand, there's not really a structure in place that you can easily, move into where you say, well, this is how we do this, and we can make sure this gets done this way because, there's a process in place. Also, with respect to the issue of the residential properties remaining residential, that's kind of a double-edged sword. In some ways, it's a difference without a distinction, or a distinction without a difference. I'm not sure which.
The latter. The latter.
It's in some ways, the people who don't want to remain in their property until they meet their maker, people who will at some point in the future want to sell their land, whether that's now or later, would be better off getting it rezoned now, because that will at least increase the value of the property on paper. Not for residential use, it won't increase it for that, but if you wanted to sell it, it would be worth more as commercial property than it is as residential property. So it's very difficult to meet all the various needs of different people in the area and do it in a way that's really fair and really adequate. And I do feel like the city has some responsibility to try to, I won't say make up for the past, it's not that, but to make sure that we're not making the situation worse. And, I don't think there's any question, for me personally, that if this were going on in my neighborhood, I'd be sitting out there. And, I would be fighting this good fight. And I just cannot vote in favor of this today as it exists right now. Can't do it. So if James...
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we deny this application for zoning at this time.
Well, I'd like to throw in a comment or two before we get a second if we do. One of the things that I've heard the protesters say eloquently is that there's a level of distrust based on history and they don't believe anything they're being told. And I don't know how we compensate for that. I mean, I don't see how we can do that here. Cities are organic. They change over time. It's not the same city it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago, or 10 years ago, which is why every 10 years we revisit the master plan or write a new one. And that'll be happening, and in fact is in process right now. And issues like this master plan, which we adopted in 2007, is a part of what's being considered, and whatever we might do today is being considered as well. I'm sympathetic and sensitive to everything I've heard today, and also understand the needs or desires of the group of entities which comprise the Health Sciences Center. And I think it is a crown jewel in the community. I think history is unfortunate in terms of what happened in the JFK neighborhood and so forth years ago, and we can't undo that. I'm in favor of having this go forward as affirmed or recommended to the City Council for their action, and that's where these issues really are more properly discussed, because they're in a position to do something about it and we're not. I mean, we're simply here to make a zoning recommendation, and that's all we can do. If we hold it up, we haven't accomplished anything. My thought.
I've got and I might want to ask the appraiser to come back up here and just answer a question for me. See if you feel the same way I feel. If you were asked to do an appraisal in that area tomorrow, would you have to say that this plan exists?
Yes, I would.
Why would you have to say this plan exists?
Well, we have to disclose any present or future use for a property, and this falls under the zoning portion, which we would have to explain that and explain what the limitations and things are to the lender.
So the horse is out of the barn.
Right, it's out of the barn, and that becomes a restriction that takes place. Yeah.
Okay. I feel the same way. I feel like that I would not be complying with uniform standards if I didn't mention that this was a plan, right. And the reason why, probably the reason why there's a lot of vacant lots in that area.
That's correct. Yeah, we definitely have to do that, and many lenders are very extremely cautious and very extremely just very detailed on things that they look at nowadays, and even though we say what we say and we say that we can get loans and these type of things, but they are looking at more things than what we may say as a pure body. We say that, oh yeah, you can do this and you can do that, but lenders are looking at things such as the neighborhood, such as the location, the number of foreclosures, vacant properties, any kind of zoning restrictions that you have, and if you have any of those type of things, that's a reason to simply reject that property. And so when we say we can come back and do all these things, we can come back and remodel, it's not as easy as they appear to make it sound. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, and in that regard, if you're going to disclose the plan that's been amended, the OKC plan, in your appraisal report, then if this zoning was also in place that allowed additional uses, still allowed the existing uses, but allowed additional uses, wouldn't that enhance your appraisal?
No, it wouldn't. As a single-family house, it would not enhance the appraisal. If anything, it would pull it out of underwriting. Because if you look at an appraisal form asks you what is the highest and best use of that property. And the highest and best use of that property, because of that new zoning, is not as a single-family home, but it becomes the highest and best use becomes as a commercial-type property. So because of that, a person or a company or a mortgage company that's lending on that property, it turns their head on it. So it really does not enhance it, yeah. Only thing that enhances it is when a speculator comes in and wants to just buy it without a mortgage. Without a mortgage. Just no someone wants to come in and just pay cash for it, yeah.
Yeah, and they look down because it's being asked to provide a loan for a residence or a single-family residence, not for commercial use.
Right, this means
Going in
that's what they're loaning on is for single family.
Not a commercial use.
Not commercial, yeah.
loan.
Okay, Commissioners?
Question?
I tell you, I will second your motion if you really want to proceed with it. I would really rather see this item continued. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I don't think it's not possible to get there. I just don't think there's any hurry to proceed with this right now. And I think if we were able to take some time and look at different alternatives, perhaps even tailor the residential versus non-residential zoning retention to meet the needs of the individuals that own those properties. I have a real continuing issue with the idea of rezoning property that is not owned by the applicant, whether it's currently has a house on it or not, whether it's currently lived on or not. We are changing those property rights, and I'm really just not there yet. I would really like to see this item continue.
And I'm not opposed to continuing the item for the very reason that you said, but then also to add to that is that there's not a rush. There's nothing in the pipe. There's nothing shovel ready to go. The developments that already are being proposed are already in action. There's been tremendous development to the east, all the way up to Lottie. There's been tremendous development all the way from west, coming from downtown Oklahoma City to Lincoln. So it's right, this property is just, you want to know why it's standing vacant, because it's in limbo. You got the Health Science Center on the north of it, so it's just a little isolated piece there that's a very valuable piece of property. The other problem I have is that, and I know we don't get into all of that, but as far as being a good neighbor with some of the issues as far as positive impact in the community would be, one, the relationship that the Health Science Center or the Presbyterian Foundation have with the neighborhood. Some of those things. And I think that I've been to all the meetings, and I have seen some progress. I've seen some of the tension reduce, and they started really dealing with some of the issues. And I would not be opposed to giving it time to continue to allow the Health Presbyterian and the foundation to continue to work on a solution where the community wins, where the city wins. The city has gotten tossed into this deal by whatever reason it's in it. But really the issue is the rezoning for the Presbyterian and the Health and the foundation. And so I just think this provides us with a great opportunity to try to mend some of those things, try to rebuild some of that trust that has been lost. And I know that's not what our issue is as a planning commissioner, but our issue is those things that have an adverse effect caused by zoning on the surrounding property and property owners. And I think this gives us a great opportunity to do it. I've witnessed up north a similar situation where they didn't have a master plan, but a few residents had some properties that was impacted by the development that they were allowed to continue to be single-family residents. They had dirt all over their houses. They were impacted by traffic, and we don't have to. We can learn from that, and we could set out to do some things here that would really make this a win-win. We don't have any problem with the Health Science Center expanding. We don't have anything wrong with the development of Oklahoma City. I think we got a great momentum. I think this is a great project. I just think the timing is not quite there yet, and I think we could get there. So I'm not opposed. I'll rescind my motion to deny it if we will, and we'll move to continue it.
Dennis Box, I'd just like to say, I think that's a decision that you all have to make. This is an application by the City of Oklahoma City, so I think that's the city's question to answer. But from our standpoint, I think we have made progress. We've tried to address all the issues that have come about in regard to development of the churches, development of the residential, and I think the whole issue about full disclosure, Mr. Allen, that you raised, that's the reason, and we've been working on this for over a year, but that's the reason that this is being asked to be put in place, so everybody that does look at and maybe have the opportunity to buy properties in this area understands what it's going to be developed for. So there's no sinister motive, there's no trying to negatively impact the neighborhood. The stats are what they are, and we've had 3 meetings, but from our standpoint, what we're trying to do is comply with that full disclosure and come up with a modified version of the PUD that lays out the uses that are appropriate, but also protects the churches and the residential property owners.
And I understand that, and I think you've done a fantastic job in doing that. But I have to agree with James that, I think there's some more work to be done here. And I'd like to ask another question about the purchase of those properties that have been purchased, if you would. How did you go about purchasing those properties? As they come available on the market, did you buy them?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you have appraisals done on them?
Did you have a what?
Did you have appraisals done on them?
On some of them not. There was an agreed upon price, on others there was an appraisal.
Okay. And how many years has it taken you to buy the 60% of them?
Well, I know that urban renewal has been active for probably 30 years in that area.
Okay. And there's nothing right now pushing to get this thing zoned or anything?
There are discussions on the health center campus of potential developments, but there's nothing specific.
Is there something ready to go in the ground right now today?
Not specific, no, but there are discussions of probable and potential developments for the future.
Yeah. Well, like Janice said a while ago, I don't think there's a person in this room that's against this proposal or against the Health Science Center. And like the chairman said, that's a crown jewel of Oklahoma City.
Well, I don't think so, since you approved the plan.
Yeah. I don't, and I don't want to be one to stand in the way of that, but I do want to, I think justice needs to be served. And I think that I'd have to agree with James, and I will second James' motion.
What's the motion?
That's the motion to continue this item.
For how long? It needs to be a
date.
A good period of time. It doesn't need to be the next meeting. Or
Indefinite.
Wait a minute. Dennis may not want, that's not fair necessarily to the applicant.
I don't want to do that.
I understand, but it's not fair to the city to have, look, the only concern I have about a continuance, and I'll just say this, is equities on both sides. We've all addressed those. There's been some far more eloquent oratory today than I have the power to deliver. But I would just suggest this. The solutions to this may be, as John suggests, outside the purview of this commission that we're discussing. This is a land use question. This is a question about whether we want to rezone this property in accordance with the PUD that's presented to us, or we don't. I mean, frankly, that's our only choice. And as much as we might like to provide compensation, we don't have a budget. I mean, we have no power. We have no power to enforce or ask anybody to do that. We can only deal with the land use question that's in front of us. I think we have to, equities and emotions that we have aside, our mandate is to determine land use, and that's it. As much as I might like to help and do a lot of other things, I can't do anything but that. So I don't know what a continuance gets us with respect of the land use.
Commissioner Gales.
I agree with what Mike is saying. This is a land use issue. I'm going to support the continuance. I'll tell you that, as long as it's for an adequate amount of time. I don't want to hear this every 2 weeks. I don't want to hear the misinformation I've heard on TV. 6 times this morning on Channel 9, I've heard references to this case. The references were not factual. That's not fair either. So I would like to see a reasonable amount of time. If there's something to be accomplished, let's get it done. That said, what Mike was saying, this is a land use deal. This is a PUD in front of us that takes away no existing rights and just adds uses. It's in conformity with the OKC plan. It's recommended by staff. And just on that basis, there really shouldn't be any of these issues. There are, and I'm not saying those issues don't exist. I think those issues need work, and certainly with a reasonable amount of time, maybe some progress can be made. That said, this is in theoretical terms, it's a relatively simple land use question. The complicating factor in my mind is the applicant is not the landowner, and that I find that troublesome also.
Well, our next meeting is December 13th. We have only one meeting this month, so is...
I think it has to go
My
at least
thinking
to
is it
January.
doesn't need to be this
90
year.
days. I think 60 days, 90 days, I think it's got to be a substantial amount of time. It's going
I
to take
agree.
some time to grapple with these issues.
Who's going to grapple with them?
I'm not.
I volunteer.
I am.
No, I mean, you know, I'm not.
Okay, look, January,
Whatever.
first meeting in January, around January
Let's do
13th.
90 days,
90 days.
That's 60 days.
60 days.
I don't think my answers are going to be, in due respect to, I think, frankly, certainly that we're doing potentially everybody a disservice by kicking it down the road for a little bit. It needs to get moved on to somebody that can do something to resolve the issues personally, but I'll go with the continuance to January first meeting in January.
I would like to, I'm sorry, but I would like to see 90 days.
Let's go
Over the
90.
holidays, it's always difficult to get people together. It's just hard. So I'd like to see 90 days.
I'll agree with 90 days.
Well, I tend to agree with Commissioner Gales and Commissioner Hensley. I'm not sure what more is going to happen. I frankly don't favor a continuance because I don't know who's going to solve this.
Not on this, not in this.
Not on this body. We can't do it.
I'm not so sure about that. I think progress has been made. I think more can be made.
And I agree with you.
January 14th. If you want 90 days, it's February 14th.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
I think 90 days is too long. James, if you will, I think we had a motion in the second. I'll withdraw my second.
The reason I went with 90 days is, as Janice said, we got Thanksgiving in, we got Christmas in, we got all these holidays in, and I think 90 days would give it some good time.
I'll withdraw my second.
I'll second motion, continuance.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to continue this item for 90 days to February 14th. Cast your votes.
I don't know. Do we have enough to pass it? I'm getting...
Five to 3 passes it.
Okay, that's passed.
Okay. We're going to take a 15-minute break. back in business.
Okay, we are on item 4, which is V3 5803. This is an application by Dusty Bourne of Four Corners Construction for a variance to the city subdivision regulations for certificates of occupancy on 3 properties in Rio de Bella Addition, Section 2.
Your name and address, please.
Dusty Bourne, 6180 Boucher Drive.
Okay.
And we purchased from a bank 79 lots within this subdivision. We are working with Amanda Carpenter and Terry Massey on getting the HOA established. We've installed the last road. The bond has been called on the subdivision to finish up the remaining drainage requirements. And we have 3 homes that are complete. Lot 23 that you see up there on the corner is actually a model home that's fully furnished and has a design center in it. And then the other 2 that we're asking for the variance on are homes that are complete. One is about to be moved into, and they need a final certificate of occupancy to do that. And then the other one we anticipate selling, because it is complete, before the end of the year.
Tell me, if you would, what work remains to be done to satisfy the settlement agreement?
There's really only 2 items remaining. There's an overlay of the streets in the south section of this section 1 that you're looking at. There's an entire overlay of the streets that the city, Amanda Carpenter, is kind of working on getting that accomplished. And then the second thing is a drainage channel that needs to be redone that was never properly performed and inspected. And that work is being surveyed, and it is underway, but they have not released the bids the last time I talked to Amanda.
And when will those completions be?
I don't have an ETA from her on when that's set to be done.
Now, who is
The city council.
She's in our office.
Oh, okay.
I think it's fair to say, Dusty's not the developer. So this is not, he's just a builder in this subdivision. The city's action against the developer has nothing really to do with him. He's just a builder, and he's the one that's trying to be proactive and get the HOA going and get these other things done, obviously, because that helps his business as well. But those are not actions that he really has any control over. Terry, these are all being bid, right?
I'm not sure if they're being bid yet or not. I don't know if we have a contract.
Okay, but this is not really, that part of it really has nothing to do with what Dusty's asking for. He doesn't have any say in that, really.
Do we know if the money from the bond is enough to complete the required?
Yes.
It is.
My only concern is we get a series of these variance requests, and then you get a whole lot of development in there, and then we come in and all the work gets done, and you kind of interfere with everybody who's moved into the neighborhood. So,
Well, how many homes are occupied in that neighborhood now?
That is a good question. I do not know the answer to that. Probably over half.
About half.
Of the neighborhood is occupied. There's a kind of a south side and a north side of this neighborhood, and the north side is probably 70% occupied, and the south side's a little less than that.
Let me ask another timing question. We approve these 3 today. Are we going to see more, or will the improvements be done before we need more COs?
Well, if it was up to me, the improvements would be done right now.
No, I understand, but you're not doing the improvements.
I have no control over when those
I understand that, but you're also building houses, and you're in communication with those people. And so what are they telling you?
Well, it's the city is managing that work being done.
I understand.
So Amanda's telling us that they're working on that, but I have not gotten any ETAs on when that work is going to be done.
well, good. We've got Amanda to tell
Hello, Amanda Carpenter with the city attorney's office. I'm sorry, if you could just explain
Well,
what...
talking about
question.
Rio de Bella and the issues on when that work was going to get done with the drainage channel and then the final overlay. I know the bond has been called, and you're working with the bank and the bonding company.
Our concern is getting a bunch of these and then having the work done once people live in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood's torn up again to have the work done once people move in.
Right. The status of the litigation right now is the City of Oklahoma City has filed a case against First American Title and Trust Company, who was the surety to the bond. We have a settlement agreement in place. It has been in place since January of 2012. Excuse me. We're working with the title company to try and get that work done. At this time, they haven't done any of the work.
Well, let me understand. I'm not a lawyer, so walk me through it. Is it the surety company holding up a title company? Is there a difference between the two? I guess there is.
The title company is the surety company.
Okay. And
Yes.
Are they just dragging their feet?
We have a meeting set up with them this next week to discuss that matter.
Was that a yes or a no?
We believe they are delaying.
That was a tactful yes.
Yeah. I was trying to get to the three-letter answer.
Okay, let me backdoor it a different way then. Are we still issuing building permits?
We are issuing, the City of Oklahoma City is issuing building permits. The building
Okay.
The building permit does clearly state that occupancy permits are not.
I understand, but we're still issuing building permits. You're still building houses as fast as you can.
Correct.
And so I think from that I can anticipate you're going to finish a bunch of houses while we're still discussing things with the title company. We haven't even, not that we're going there, but I'm going to say, we haven't even made it to the courthouse yet.
We have made it to the courthouse.
Oh, we have?
We have.
The case is settled. They're just working out the details of enforcing the settlement agreement, which will come next. It's the next round of the litigation.
Oh, I missed that point, I'm sorry.
Round two of the litigation is enforcing the settlement that you made earlier on. That's the purpose, which is the initial step of this meeting. Let me just kind of gather in there, so you don't have to make this statement. We're having a meeting to say, hey, get on it. Then we're going to sue them to enforce the settlement.
Or we run back across the street. I understand.
We do know there is another one next week from a different builder. Next meeting.
In December.
Yeah, next meeting.
Is it inappropriate to ask, do we think that the delay is simply related to their general reluctance to spend money in the current economy, or do we have any doubts about their ability to perform, or?
I can't answer that question. I know that they've had conversations with contractors who have done work in the area, specifically some of the roads that were recently completed in the reinstated portion of the plat. So I know they've been in contact, but I don't know what the delay is because.
Okay.
I think this is almost a two-edged sword here, and maybe it's more than that, maybe it's more than what I see, but on one side of this, I see what the city is doing to complete what the developer failed to do. On the other side of this, I mean, you've got builders in there that are obviously having success, and so, you know, I'm not inclined to inhibit or prohibit their success by selling the house, obviously, so I'll move approval.
Well, we have a motion and a second to approve item 4. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
We feel a little sorry for the homeowners going in who will have this work follow them, but
Item 5 is ABC 768. This is an application by Vidal Dubon for an ABC 2 overlaying C3 at 5425 South Pennsylvania Avenue in Ward 6.
I'll be helping him. He doesn't speak much English.
can you get in front of the microphone, please, and pull it down so we can hear you? And give us your name and address and his.
Yeah, my name is Yelsi Avila. My address is 1241 Northwest 45th. And his name is Vidal Dubon. And the address that he's asking about is 5425 South Pennsylvania Avenue. And he's requesting the license, or you could say the permit from y'all, for selling alcohol beverages at his establishment.
Is this an existing operating restaurant, or will it be new?
No, it is an existing restaurant that is already running. Pretty much he's just requesting the permit.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, no one has signed up. We have a motion and a second to approve item 5. Cast your votes. Mike, you cast a no? Okay. You're approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well,
He did. It's very negative today. Item 6 is SPUD 689, application by LBL Investments to rezone 15500 Jefferson's Garden Court from SPUD 625 to SPUD 689 in Ward 8.
I'm Dr. Lindsay from LBL Investments, if you have any questions.
and tell us just briefly what you're planning.
We're planning on an outpatient therapy program for children and adolescents.
Okay. Commissioners, no one has signed up.
Tell me about the communication services tower, the cell tower.
The cell tower is it was an existing structure on the property when we purchased the property. There's a 10-year lease that was made with the previous owners. It's got a big fence around it, and it's a safe structure. We're a Joint Commission certified facility, so we have to comply with all of the Joint Commission's regulations around facility safety.
And that 10-year lease has been running for now about 2 or 3 years.
That's my understanding.
You intend to renew that lease?
I don't have any plans in that regard. I'm a doctor. I'm interested in treating kids. So I don't know much about the cell phone business.
Thank you.
He doesn't have to decide that for about 7 years.
Well, but in 7 years, we don't get another shot at it.
Yes.
I'll move approval of the application.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 6. Cast your votes. And that's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7 is C-6376. This is a final plat of the estates of Forest Glen Commons in Ward 4.
I'm Randy Hill with E.D. Hill Surveying and Engineering, representing Jeff Moore, who's the developer. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions if you have any.
There is one protest letter in your packet, Commissioners.
We do agree with the summary of technical evaluations.
No one signed up.
Nobody signed up.
No.
I'll move to approve the application.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 7. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 8 is C-6394. This is the final plat of Kingsridge Lake Estates in Ward 1.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mark Ritchie with Civil Design and Survey of Oklahoma here on behalf of the applicant. I'm glad to say we can agree with all the TEs, and I'm glad to answer any questions you might have.
And you have met the requirement in terms of providing the off-site private drainage easement? Is that correct?
That issue was discussed in a meeting before this meeting with the 7th floor engineering department, and that's been satisfied. We're changing the design on the interconnect.
Okay.
So the private easement won't be needed.
All right, Commissioners, no one has signed up. We have a motion and a second to approve item 8. Cast your votes. And that's approved. Thank you.
Item 9 is SPUD 690, an application by Nichols Green LLC to rezone 8200 North May from I1 Single Family to SPUD 690 in Ward 2.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates representing the applicant. This is an infill zoning case. As you're aware, we came in and zoned the property to the north for the convalescent home, which is actually the memory care center. And then we abut commercial on the south. This is a O2, a limited O2 use. We're anticipating medical offices. We've limited the heights of the buildings, set up the setbacks. The staff has recommended approval. There's no TEs. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Tim, why are you asking for O2?
Because of the medical uses that are proposed.
Just the
yeah, I mean, it's they're mostly found in O2, so rather than say O1 and add the medical uses, staff agreed with us that we just leave it as O2.
Thank you.
Tricky curve to get in and out of, but other than that. No one has
Obviously, the
signed up.
parking will be the limiting factor on the building sizes.
No one has signed up, Commissioners.
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 9. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
It's approved.
Item 10 is C-6398, a final plat of La Sonata, addition in Section 5, Ward 8.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chris Anderson with SMC Consulting Engineers representing the developer. We've read the staff report and agree with the TEs and just request approval of the plat.
I understand we might be able to eliminate TE3. You've met that requirement, is that correct?
Yes, we have.
Okay. No one has signed up, Commissioners.
Move approval eliminating TE3.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 10, deleting TE3. Cast your votes, and it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 11 is C-6400, final plat of Doe Crossing in Ward 4.
I'm Ron Wynn with Wynn Engineering, and I'm representing the applicant, Farm Doe, and he is here today if you have any questions for him. But we have a plat here to provide two residential lots to build a residence on. It's going to be a personal residence of Mr. Doe, and so if you'd like to ask any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But we have been in contact with engineering and agree to the TEs that's been recommended. And so we'll agree to that.
No one has signed up, and we do have a variance TE3.
Move the variance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the variance TE3. Cast your votes. That's approved.
I'll move to approve the application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 11. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I apologize. I missed it.
My name is Joe Riedel. My address is 15015 Bay Ridge Drive, and I live directly adjacent to Section 1, what they're planning on doing on Lot 1 there. And right now, we moved in about a year ago, and when the contractor told us that lot was vacant and was most likely going to be vacant forever. However, you know, he probably told us that in good faith, and what happens, happens. A year later, now it's up for development. But in this is the Turtle Lake Edition, and people buy these lots because of the view. You know, they're all acre lots or more, and our view out the back is woods, and then you have at least, if your acre is back to back with another one, you have at least an acre and a half in between you. All right, what they're planning on doing is building a house like 200 feet behind ours, where our back view is going to be the side of that house. And I'm worried about our property value going down. You know, these houses in this section aren't cheap. They're 2,200 feet minimum. So I ask that it be disapproved, or if you can't do that as a minimum, if it's under your purview, make them under put them under the Turtle Lake covenants to where they can control what's being built there, size restrictions, whatever. I don't know if that's under your purview or not.
Well, we don't have the ability to extend the neighborhood association boundaries beyond what they are in terms of an HOA.
Let me address that real quick. Excuse me. When we laid this final plat out, we had to conform precisely to the PUD that was associated with the Turtle Lake subdivision there. So we are complying completely with that same provisions for the size of house, the lot setbacks, and everything else that went along with the Turtle Lake. So you can feel comfortable that that's going to be the type of development that goes there. And the minimum size lot there is 1 acre. The remaining lot is about 5 acres, so there's going to be a single-family residence on that 5-acre plot, going to be right at the edge of the lake. So it's going to be a nice development.
Okay.
Again, we're not worried about what goes on that main section. It's just what's going in that Section 1. Because, like I said, our view is going to be for the first 2 lots, which are actually drawn incorrectly there because they plotted or platted, whatever you call, number 1 and 2 of Section 3, because they look more, mine looks like that. But anyway, for those two lots, what we're going to see is the side of their house. So we wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. In order for Mr. Lytle to feel like we have heard him, I want to rescind the motion. Whoever made the motion, I want to rescind it, and then have discussion, and then have another action.
Yes, I would rescind that motion.
All right, so will you make a motion to reconsider?
I will. Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to reconsider. Cast your votes. Okay, it's now open for discussion. James?
Mr. Chairman, I have one question for the developer, for Ron, I guess Ron? Yes, Ron. Yeah. Maybe I missed it or something, but how are you planning on taking access to those lots?
There'll be access directly on 149th Street. We actually staked out the driveway approaches, and I'm ashamed to admit I called Stuart Chai this morning to go take a look at it, knowing he couldn't get out there in time, but I told him I'd work with him on the location of those driveways. But on lot 1, there'll be two cuts, right? On lot 1, it's going to be adjacent to the property line on the east side. There's a tree line. We don't have an aerial view, but there's a tree line down that lot line, to the west lot line of lot 1. And so we've got to keep our driveway approach for that lot is, yeah, there you go. You can see there's a tree line there in a drainage area. And then on the other lot, it'll be about the middle of the lot, a little bit maybe to the west of the middle. There's another subdivision been approved across the street, another PUD just recently. So we wanted to try to locate that driveway approach so it wouldn't conflict with that development. It's coming in on the north side of 149th.
And traffic was okay with those drive approaches right onto 149th?
Sir, say that again.
I said traffic division was okay with the drive approaches?
They have not, and it's my fault, I didn't call them quickly enough, but they would, I'll work with them on that. If we have to adjust it slightly, we will, but our proposal now, I've been retired. Oh, here it goes. Proposal now is to put just one driveway approach about the center of the larger lot, and then one on the far east side of lot 1. And I think that's going to be okay. There's a little bit of a rise in that land there, so we've got to be so far away from that kind of vision for our vision purposes. But that answer your question about the driveway approaches? There's going to be two?
Yes, I was just surprised. I only see main entrance to the subdivisions along 149th, and I was just kind of surprised that they would be able to put driveways right on 149th Street, but if they can, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussion, commissioners? A motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item
11.
11, right?
Yeah.
And we've approved the variance, but we probably need to do that again. So motion for the variance, Jimmy, first.
Motion for the variance. Motion for the variance.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance TE3. Cast your votes. Motion on the application?
Motion on the application.
Second, for the fourth time.
We have a motion to approve item 11. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Thank you again.
Item 12 has been continued until December the 13th. Item 13 is CE 836, application by Orthopedic Associates, Inc. to close a portion of Northwest 51st Street, west of Independence Avenue in Ward 2.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Cooper. I'm with HDR Cooper Medical, representing the applicant. I'll be able to answer any questions you have.
We do have a protest letter attached with this. Janice, go ahead.
Oh, well, I have some questions about this. I went out and looked at this, and one of the favorable considerations that's listed in the staff report is that eliminating the access to Grand Boulevard will stop the current practice of vehicles traveling the wrong way south of the diverter at Grand Boulevard to access Lake Kefner Parkway. And I looked at this, but I guess is that really an issue? I mean, is that something that really happens out there?
Yes,
It
it
looks
is.
either suicidal or impossible to me, but I know people do crazy stuff all the time. The issue, I guess, that I have, and the question I have, is whether, if there's traffic that cuts through here, either way, east or west, whether we'll be pushing that traffic up onto 52nd Street, where it will be in front of those residential properties there. I mean, on the one hand, this looks like one big development tract to me. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where you think, why did anybody ever put a street here? But if there is traffic that goes through there, I don't want it going down 52nd.
It won't. Janice, I officed in the Grand Center up there for years, and I know exactly what they're talking about, where they're saying cutting across on 51st and taking access to the Parkway. With that closed, people can't go across 52nd Street and do that because they'd have to come a block south the wrong direction.
But are those the only people who use 51st Street? People who are cutting through there?
Pretty much. There's no, if you want to go north on Independence, there's no reason for you to go down the access road there or Grand Boulevard and cut across on 51st to go north. And there is no reason to come across 51st and go north on Grand Boulevard.
Well, I wondered about that because isn't left turn traffic from 50th onto Independence curtailed there?
No,
Isn't it prohibited?
it's stoplight.
Traffic light.
I know there's a light there, but doesn't it prohibit left? No. So, okay. What's the protest letter about?
It's from Integris.
And what do they say?
It's a very short protest letter, essentially, that says that it might interfere with traffic. I travel that area as well, and I believe that 99% of the traffic would stem from the two parking spaces there on north and south of that street. I don't know that anybody cuts through there.
Okay.
I'm there all the time too, Janice.
There's
no reason. If somebody wants to go north on Hefner, they're to come south on Independence and go west on 50th for one block and then get on.
I actually travel through this area all the time. I couldn't have told you this street even went through. But if there's not anybody who's here today appearing on this, I think I'd move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 13. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Item 14 is ABC 769, application by Oklahoma City University for an ABC 2, overlaying SPUD 624 at 1923 Northwest 23rd Street in Ward 2.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. And the applicant is actually Sodexo. This is an application for an ABC 2 to permit a restaurant to go in. This commission may remember we came back previously for a rezoning application for the same building for a small retail shop, and that shop didn't work out. It's now gone out. So what Sodexo would like to do is turn this into a restaurant. Sodexo is the company that operates all the rest of the restaurants on OCU's campus. This site is obviously off campus, but they intend to cater to the students. And there was 2 letters submitted in protest. I think the third letter referenced in the agenda is actually a support letter. And the protest references some parking issues. So to address that, on site, we actually have 8 angled parking spaces along Virginia. This big parking lot right here, which is just north and east of our restaurant, has 118 parking spaces. What we're going to do is build a little sidewalk to there, and there will be signage indicating that that's where you can park. So we feel that there's adequate parking, and like I said, since Sodexo operates all the other restaurants on campus, it's our belief that a large number of the people that will frequent this restaurant will already be parked somewhere on campus and simply walk to the restaurant. I'm here to answer any questions, and we'd ask for your support.
How is that parking lot used now? Is that for student housing or during class times, or how is it used?
Just an open parking lot for university, but they're going to allow parking here for the restaurant.
We do have someone signed up, Commissioners. Mr. Barnett? If you'd give us your name and address, please.
Mike Barnett, 1104 Southwest 107th Street.
Okay.
I am the manager of the Baptist Collegiate Ministry, which is at the corner of 23rd and Kentucky. I guess that's the two lots there on that same block on the other end. And our ministry has been there since 1980. This is a place of worship. We have a church that meets there several times a week, and we have student worships there every week. And we were just concerned that this was a facility serving alcohol within 300 feet of our location. And I was also concerned that it was being sponsored by the providers there at OCU of the alcohol being offered, I guess, and also, students can use their cards, their meal tickets that they get for there to use at the cafeteria. They can also use that for alcohol there on that premises. So my question is that we just felt that it was not a very good location. I was very surprised with the color of the building, if you've driven by and seen the big bright blue roof. And I know when we asked for the urban design about putting $250,000 upgrade into our building, we were told, what color to paint it. And so I was very surprised that that was acceptable. But my objection is that we wondered if it was within the 300 feet rule and its purposes of alcohol, and our location being there, we just felt like it was probably not a wise thing morally to encourage your students. We've got a fraternity house that's less than 100 yards there. Its balcony looks out at at that facility. And with that, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming down. And what's the rule?
It's an ABC2.
It's an ABC2, so there's not a space. I didn't think so. Okay.
And if I may just address a couple of the things. On the issue of the meal tickets being able to use with student ID, they can also use those student IDs at Chili's and Grand House and restaurants all over town where alcohol is served. So it's not just exclusive to this. A student can use their ID at a bunch of different restaurants that have an agreement with the university.
I didn't have that kind of card when I went to school, unfortunately.
I went to OCU, and they certainly didn't give me the ability to do that, so my dad's probably happy about that.
I have a couple of things that I just want to remark on very briefly. My concern about this application when I first saw it had to do with parking. The site itself has virtually no parking. If we approve the SVD, what it will say is that the parking that's provided on site is sufficient. And for me, for us, that's a problem that is kind of recurring. It recurs perhaps more in Ward 2 than some other places. But where parking is tight and people have these agreements with off-site parking, we don't have any real way to enforce that or control it or even incorporate it into the zoning. And I have some real concern about sort of the long-term implications of that. The parking that's there would certainly be adequate for this kind of a use if nobody else was using it, but it is parking that is general to the university. There's no way to control or limit it or dedicate it to this use, even during certain hours, I assume. There is housing nearby. I'm guessing when I went to law school at OCU, parking was always at a premium. That may have improved somewhat. I understand they've built some parking facilities since I was there, those many years ago. But I think that we are going to have to come to grips in some kind of policy way with this issue of parking that is considered in the process of approval, but is not really incorporated in a strict sense into either the application or the final approval for these kinds of uses. Having said all of that, I'll move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 14. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 15 is C-6399. This is the final plat of Danforth Apartments in Ward 8.
Steve Rollins with ARC Engineering Consultants, representing the applicant. We have a 7.21 acre multifamily residential development that's a part of PUD 1225. We have about 134 units planned. We agree with all the TEs, and if there are any other questions, I'd be glad to address those now.
There's one letter of protest in your packet. No one has signed up.
This really doesn't bear on the application, but I have a question for staff. This is zoned in PUD 1225, which indicates to me that it hadn't been zoned that way for a terribly long time. Can you look at the file and tell me when we did 1225, just out of curiosity?
It was approved on April 10th, 2007.
Thank you.
I'll approve it.
I'll move approval.
Okay. Second. Second. Then.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 15. Cast your votes, and you're approved.
Thank you.
Item 16 has been continued until December the 13th. Item 17 is C-6396. This is a preliminary plat of St. James Point in Ward 3.
Good afternoon, Kendall Dillon with Craft and Toll representing the applicant, and this is obviously an application for a preliminary plat with 66 lots on 31 acres, and this particular tract lies entirely within a previously approved preliminary plat of St. James Point that was approved by you all back in 2004, and so it was approved in 2004. You all heard the first section final plat later that year, and section 1 of the first section was actually constructed and completed in 2005. Since then, this particular project has went through a couple different owners and has basically stalled, and obviously during that time frame the preliminary plat has expired. So the true intent of this is basically to extend the preliminary plat so that my client can go and develop the remaining section of it. We are in agreement with staff TEs, and you do notice that there was a couple protest letters. One of them was from a property owner in a separate subdivision concerned about traffic. And we have verified through your staff that there is a signal plan that currently is in place and is set to be bid in February of this next year for that intersection at Highway 152 and 59. The other letter of protest was an interior property owner. And previously this week, my client did meet with the homeowner association to talk about the numerous details that were in that letter and other things. So we've done that. He tells me that it was a pretty positive meeting. So we feel like this is a good opportunity to revitalize and to restart and to complete this project, and would ask for your approval.
When you say that this has stalled, and the fact that you're here is an indication that it's unstalled now, that you're moving forward?
That's the plan.
Okay.
If you all will approve it, our plan is to follow up with another final plat on this remaining section here in short order and move ahead.
No one signed up.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 17. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Thank you.
Item 18 has been continued until December the 13th. Item 19 is a resolution determining the proposed First Amendment to the Court Shore Urban Renewal Plan be in conformance with the comprehensive plan of the city as amended, and recommending its approval to the City Council.
And the motion is to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second. That was quick this time. We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Cast your votes, and that's approved.
Yeah.
That concludes the cheerful public portion of our meeting.
Before we conclude that, on item 4, the bond case, my vote showed, I meant to vote for approval of that item, not no for that item. So
left the switch in the wrong place.
Left the switch in the wrong place. I apologize. So if we could have the record reflect that, I'd appreciate that.
Planning Commission committees? Planning Commissioners? Janice? No? Okay. Anyone else? Planning Department, Russell?
In our December meeting, we have an Urban Development Committee where we're going to have the first of 2 meetings discussing amendments to the PUD ordinance. So we're going to do that over 2 separate meetings, but that will be the first one of those. And then we will also provide an update on Plan OKC, on the studies that are going on in a study session immediately following that. And then the next Citizens Advisory Team is on November the 19th. That's a Monday, 3:30. That begins 3:30 to 5. And if you're not on the committee, you're still more than welcome to show up.
Yep. We have a lot of fun. You all come.
They will be redoing the community appearance survey, as you heard.
So you get to
vote often.
Yeah, you get to do it a third time if you're lucky. Municipal Counselor's Office. Well, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
I actually do have something.
Pardon me?
I actually do have something I wanted to ask Russell
Meeting's adjourned, Janice. I'm
specifically.
sorry.
If we wanted to do something about the issue of the parking thing, who and what would be the thing to do? I mean, should we form a little? Should I get with the municipal counselor's office, or is it a planning thing, or I mean, is there a way to address it at all? And if so, who would be the people to pull together?
You know, I think it really comes down on an enforcement issue. I mean, they can make a promise to provide the parking and can be attached to the approval for the zoning. But then, you know, over time, unless you're monitoring it, and if it's a satellite lot and they redevelop it for something else, that is permissible under the PUD. If you've got multiple uses or straight zoning, then it would be very difficult to, I think that, you know, people could rezone it. But I don't know that we have a lot of instances of the separated parking. I know that's certainly the case on Western Avenue. In this particular case, it was all the same property because it's on the campus, so it's not the same.
The thing we approved today is not on the campus.
Well, it's part of the campus function. It's a restaurant, same restaurant operators.
OCU owns the building. That's true.
Yeah. Right. So, you know, I don't know that we've run into this situation in a lot of other places. I mean, it's possible it could come up more frequently in the urban area as these older commercial districts continue to fill in. And, you know, the real solution is for the property owners to talk to each other and work it out so that there's shared parking. That would be the real solution. I think difficult to regulate it and deal with the enforcement, yeah.
So the answer to
Not impossible, but
the answer to my question is you're the guy to talk to about this. So I'll be calling later.
Well, no, I think JJ was volunteering.
Yeah, it's just an issue as density increases anywhere. And, you know, the solution in New York City is $80 a day to park a car, you know, at one extreme. So, you know, it's going to be a fact of life if we continue to be successful with Bricktown, north of Bricktown, and, you know, the areas along 23rd Street are going to evolve that way. The Plaza District will, Paseo has. We're just going to see more of it without a, quote, solution that we can put in an ordinance or subdivision regulation that'll fix it, I think. Motion adjourned is approved by everybody, including Bright, who's not here.